Welcome back to another episode of the Nick Cage Fight podcast, where we vow to protect our city from vague plots and sinister twists. The city is Atlantic City, and no one has asked us to do this. We do this because we just didn't think there were enough podcasts out there, much like superhero movies. I'm one of your hosts, Josh, joined as always by my super teammates, Rich and Ryan. How are we?
I am the Bat.
I'm just out here trying to save Atlantic City
Being the night, being vengeance.
by getting way too hammered and losing money at craps.
There you go. Those are the real heroes of Atlantic City.
Yeah.
So we're here to do our second installment reviewing Kick-Ass, the 2010 R-rated superhero-ish movie starring Nicolas Cage.
And we are going to try to stay on topic this time. We will not be talking about cereal mascots and who would win in a fight.
I thought we landed on it was Urkel.
I did not find evidence of Urkel ever busting ghosts, so I'm sure he could. I'm sure he could if he tried, but the evidence is not there. We only have to go off facts and logic, and they don't care about your feelings.
This is true, much like ghosts.
Ghosts also famously do not care about your feelings.
Very true.
I've seen Casper, the 1994 PG movie.
Which was remade as American Horror Story Season 1.
I have to tell my fiance that take on that because she loves American Horror Story season 1. I don't think she's ever thought of that angle. So
It's just Casper, but horny.
horny Casper.
I mean, Casper was pretty horny.
Yeah, Casper was a little horny too, just in general.
Yeah, like that movie, like he was trying to fuck Christina Ricci the whole time.
I don't disagree with this.
Yeah.
Gritty
You
Casper
can't-
reboot when?
No, I don't want it. I'm tired of the gritty remakes. I'm so tired of them.
Oh, I'm not. Give me all the gritty remakes. Give me the Land Before Time gritty remake.
That's
The
gritty
Land
enough
Before
as
Time-
it is. That's already some
Yeah,
dark
it
shit.
don't get grittier than that. That's how you introduce your children to the concept of death. It does not get more grim than that.
Especially if you look into the backstory of it and like
Oh,
what happened to some of those
no.
child actors. That is
Nope.
some dark shit.
Yeah. Or rather, yup. We're not going there.
Nope.
If you know, you know. But we will not be hashing it out here. Go listen to a
Alright.
true crime podcast. So where we last left off, Big Daddy and Hit Girl were crushing a mobster inside a car that they placed into a car crushing device of some sort, a car crusher, if you will. But the scene immediately following that, I think, is one of the most important scenes of the whole movie. And I'll explain why. So a police officer breaks into a house. We see a lock picking device in his hands as he enters the front door. And it quickly becomes apparent as he walks through the house and enters a safe room with a bunch of weapons on the wall. This is the McCready's primary base of operations. And this is the room that we've seen Damon McCready doing his planning, plotting, and comic book drawing. And this police officer picks up one of the comics and reads it and actually gives us the backstory of Big Daddy and Hit Girl. And it turns out that we get it's implied that this officer is almost immediately referenced in the comic books as Damon's partner when he was a police officer prior to taking up the role of Big Daddy. And while trying to bring down the D'Amico crime family, Damon found himself on the wrong side of those particular individuals. And so they framed him as a drug dealer and sent him to prison under Frank D'Amico's orders. His pregnant wife had a hard time coping with this, and we're led to believe that she killed herself while he was in prison, but her baby survived, and that was Mindy. And Mindy was put into the care of his partner, who we find out is named Marcus. And Marcus took care of Mindy until Damon got out of prison, roughly around when she was 5. And that's when Damon started training Mindy to essentially be a little child soldier assassin. And that is the origin of Big Daddy and Hit Girl. And Marcus is confronted by Damon sort of right when he gets to the end of this story. And they have a bit of a conversation about the ethics and morals of what Damon is doing, particularly its impact on Mindy and her childhood. And it sort of ends with Marcus sort of implying that he's not going to turn Damon in, but he's got to be careful. He even gives Damon some useful information
Now, I do take a bit of umbrage with the scene leading up to Damon coming in.
Yes.
It's done in the style of comic book panels. Now, this is based on a comic book by John Romita Jr. and Mark Millar. John Romita Jr. is one of the greatest comic book cartoonists, comic book drawers that has ever lived. He's the son of John Romita, one of the best Spider-Man scribes. They had panels they could have just pulled from the comic book. They did not. They took his art and butchered it. They like recolored it so it looks like a PS2 fucking cell shaded video game. And it's frankly offensive to this man's excellent art.
Right out of Comic Zone.
Yeah, no arguments there. Ryan's our resident expert on exactly this sort of topic and many other topics, but his word is law here. If he says it, believe it. And if you don't believe it, go ahead and do a double check yourself. Get the comics, watch the movie, let us know what you think. But I agree with him.
If you want to see some good John Romita Jr. art, read Enemy of the State, the Wolverine taken over by the Hand Clan story. It's good stuff. He draws the shit out of a pissed off, brainwashed Wolverine.
Now, as to why, in my opinion, this is one of the most important scenes in the film, is it is the only view we get of essentially the third character that Nick Cage is portraying in this film. So far, we've seen, up until now, we've only seen two. We've seen his interactions with Mindy, which are all about training her to be essentially a comic book hero and to violently dispatch criminals. And then we've seen him in his Big Daddy persona, which, as we said before, is largely cribbed from Adam West's portrayal of Batman. And then we get this, which is the only real glimpse we get into Damon McCready in the film. And he's justifying why he's training Mindy like this. And when Marcus goes to leave, his parting shot is, "You owe that girl a childhood." He says, "You know who owes her a childhood is Frank D'Amico." And it's a well-acted scene in general, but it's also the only real glimpse you get of this dude, because the front that he puts up with his daughter is exactly that. It's a means to an end. It's part of her training. It is establishing himself as an archetype as opposed to an actual person. And it is incredibly effective, as we find out as the rest of the movie plays out. But that's why I'll give the nod to Cage specifically as doing the best job in this, is he's essentially playing three separate roles and has one shot to really cement in your mind who he is beneath the mask and beneath the title of mentor to Hit Girl, essentially.
Right, because up till this point, as far as we know, he's just a guy who hates crime. There's no rhyme or reason behind it.
Yeah, it establishes the backstory, but it's also the most real. He runs into somebody from his previous life up here who actually fucking knew him before he was just fight the bad guys and train my kid into, a child soldier, right? So it's the only real look you get at this person for the entirety of the film. So yeah, I thought that was pretty interesting and pretty well done in general, especially because I don't think that the actors were necessarily given a whole lot of breathing room as far as their portrayals were concerned here. So I thought this was clever.
Yeah, because there's just too much. There's like not enough room, because a lot of this is, again, it's 2010. They're playing off the hype of the beginnings of the MCU. They're just trying to get a whole bunch of comic book movies out. And this was, marketed as a comic book not for children, or a comic book movie not for children. So they had to squeeze in as much kind of violence, gore, and fucks as possible.
Yeah, there's a fair amount of shoehorning going on, and it's already a derivative of a derivative, essentially. But this is decent acting, in my opinion, even if it's largely glossed over in the grander scheme of things as far as the story that's being told. But from here we get, Frank D'Amico being driven around town in these spots, what appears to be Kick-Ass walking down the street, and has his driver follow him. He follows Kick-Ass into an alley and spin kicks the shit out of him. Gets witnessed by a bystander, takes the driver's gun, shoots the bystander dead, and then shoots Kick-Ass like in the head, and then gets back into the car. this wasn't actually Dave. We get, I mean, it's obvious from the jump, but we get at least they don't draw it out too much. We get a brief scene of Katie crying, saying, "I can't believe he's dead. Like, I actually knew him," but she's talking to Dave about Razul. The news of his murder has come out at this point, and she's crying on Dave's shoulder about it.
Now, my only thing with this is very quickly they just go to a news that says they go to like a news thing that says kick-ass imposter murdered. How did they know it was an imposter?
That's a very good point. Although, Dave could have been
It's-
posting it on his fucking MySpace or something.
I think it's because they know that guy has a job as like a children's entertainer dressed as Kick-Ass. That's like his
Okay.
current job.
Okay,
Which-
I just missed that, I guess.
Which is addressed in one of the funnier scenes in the movie, in my opinion.
Oh,
Be-
which is the who hires a kick-ass when you
Yeah.
can hire Spider-Man or something?
yeah, and it's Mark Strong doing an amazing job, just being absolutely furious and doing lines of coke while his business associate Big Joe's like, dude, you can't be doing it. Like, you shooting people in public, like you're the boss. Like, we've set up blinds so that you don't do this shit. And he's just ripping lines, being like, "Mommy, I want a kick-ass party." It's a pretty fantastic scene.
It's pretty funny. And I do love the Spider-Man shout out because the artist who worked on the Kick-Ass comic, he's the son of the best known Spider-Man artist, the guy
Yes.
who worked through like the first 30 or so issues in the 60s.
And he says, he's like, "I get a Spider-Man party, but I don't get a kick-ass party. I don't
Or-
understand that."
Rather, the second set of 30 issues, the first one was Steve Ditko, if I'm not mistaken. But still, like, the point remains that John Romita, JR's father, was like the big Spider-Man artist for a long time.
So and in the middle of Frank D'Amico ripping a bunch of lines of coke, Chris barges in and has an idea as to how he can draw out Kick-Ass, and
Has a very good idea as far as I'm concerned, too.
it's a good idea. It's bizarre that his mob boss father and his mob boss father's friend agrees to do this. This is a scheme that costs them burning an associate of theirs, like just handing them over into government custody, as well as at least 60 grand on a vehicle, probably more. But the premise is, Chris sets up a superhero persona, captures and delivers a high-ranking mob person, and gets a little news story, and then reaches out to Kick-Ass for a team up.
It's just, I thought it was a very good scene too, because it's like it's so clearly rehearsed by the son, who's just like, "Oh yeah, you can contact me at this phone number and at this website anytime you need anything."
Yeah, he has it all set up. It's a fairly elaborate ruse, but Kick-Ass responds and agrees, and they do a little team up, and we get
Off a Facebook message, like, "Hey, what's up? We should team up," and he's just
Yeah.
like, "Yeah."
it's exactly what you'd expect kids pretending to be superheroes to do with all of this, which is one of the main things that they lean on in Kick-Ass in general. But again, all of this is a setup to deliver Kick-Ass to the lumber warehouse that is a front for the D'Amico crime family. We get some relatively funny scenes of them cruising around in Red Mist's Mistmobile, sort of dancing to a CeeLo Green song. Wait, no, it's not a CeeLo Green song. It's
I don't know. I know the song. I just don't know who did it. Let me see if I can find out.
I know
It's
the
that whole,
Violent
like-
Femmes do my favorite cover of it, but I will
Yeah.
find out who does the original.
Like I remember when when I
Yeah.
lost my mind. That song, yeah.
yeah, that's
Charles Barkley.
Yeah, I thought I don't know why I fucked that up originally. But anyway, so yeah, they're dancing in the car, having a good time. Chris is smoking weed. Basically real like goofball hour as they're driving around. But eventually they head to the lumber warehouse where a crew is getting ready for the arrival of Kick-Ass. But when Kick-Ass and Red Mist show up, the place is on fire. Red Mist runs in because he knows there's a bunch of people that he literally knows in this place that's on fire, and Kick-Ass reluctantly follows him. There's a bunch of dead mobsters. The place is very ablaze. It's even the way it's shot, it seems like it's mostly practical effects, which good on them for doing, because it seemed like a legitimately scary situation. But yeah, the whole place is in flames. Red Mist grabs a teddy bear off of one of the shelves, and him and Kick-Ass escape like right before the place goes up completely. This is one of the two areas I'm going to call out. This is a deviation from the comic book source that the movie's based on. Red Mist being one of the major changes here. Like Chris D'Amico, they do a lot of humanizing of the character in general. In the comic book, like he's an asshole that's just pretending the whole time, whereas in the movie you can sense that he's just sort of trying to cash in on this commonality with people his own age that he's clearly not getting. In the comic book, he's a dick from the jump, and everything is just a front. But also, when they come across the burning building, it's not the lumber warehouse. It's actually like an apartment building, and Kick-Ass runs in with Red Mist being the one hanging back, reluctant to go in. So this kind of turns that on its head a little bit. So Red Mist returns home. Essentially, Frank D'Amico and Big Joe were supposed to pull up into the warehouse after the goons had subdued Kick-Ass for some type of interrogation, but when they arrive, everything is on fire as well, and they don't see Kick-Ass and Red Mist arrive or leave or anything like that. So Frank D'Amico is back at the compound, and they pull in the corrupt police officer that's working for them and explaining that, you know, Kick-Ass killed a bunch of guys and torched their place. When Chris shows up with the teddy bear, explaining that it's a nanny cam that he set up because he thought it would be cool to get some of the Kick-Ass stuff on video. And then we are treated to another one of the ultra violent scenes when he plugs the teddy bear in, and we see Big Daddy murdering a bunch of mobsters with guns, knives, grenades, in relatively badass fashion. I'm not
Just
gonna
like
lie.
Batman would do.
It's a cool scene.
Yeah.
I thought it was a cool scene.
Most scenes with Big Daddy are the highlights of this film.
I
So I
agree.
did find a single piece of housekeeping we didn't call out. The detective that shows up, that is the dad from Terminator 2, apparently.
Really?
Oh,
Yeah, the one who gets stabbed through the milk.
Ah, interesting.
your parents are dead.
Yeah, he's a little bit low in the overall casting listing.
Yeah,
Anyway.
I wouldn't noticed it either, but I was trying to figure out the name of that the detective character, and it's Detective Gigante.
Yes. So Big Daddy kills everybody in a very Punisher-esque sequence, trying to see how many Punisher references we can fit into this review, and then sets the whole place on
It's
fire.
apropos. John Romita Jr. did do a good Punisher run of like 3 or 4 issues.
There you go. So at this point, Marcus calls Damon and gives him a heads up that basically words out about Big Daddy. So him and Hit Girl gear up to go to war. They're pushing into the final phase of their plan. Dave is rethinking his involvement in this superhero thing between being a witness and accomplice after the fact to a series of murders and running into a burning building. He thinks he's got to give this up, but before he does, he's going to try and cash in. The way that he does this is he dresses up in his kick-ass outfit and sneaks into Katie's bedroom window and tries to reveal himself. This does not go the way he thought it would, because his opening line is drowned out by her blow dryer, because she's blow drying her hair. And when she notices him, she sprays him in the face with some sort of hair product and then starts trying to hit him with a bat, after which he pulls off his mask and exclaims that he is both kick-ass and not gay. This confession goes
Rather
over
swimmingly.
What was that?
Rather swimmingly.
Yeah, it surprisingly goes well for a no homo superhero reveal. Again, this movie is weirdly homophobic.
Yeah,
It's got that through line of not that every character has the not gays.
Yeah, it's completely illogical in that Katie gets over this with a speed that would impress the Flash, if we're doing superhero references here, because instead of kicking him out and never speaking to him again, she invites him to stay the night, and they presumably bang.
Awkwardly fondling her boobs.
Yeah, it's
a very awkward sex scene.
Yep. Yes, it is. So Dave and Katie are now dating, but still maybe keeping up the gay friend ruse, because in the very next scene where they're meeting with their friends and everything like that, after Katie makes a sort of lewd remark about Kick-Ass, Dave says, like, do you want to go see some sort of rom-com movie or whatever? And that's their excuse to ditch their friends at the comic book shop. So I don't even know what's going on with that
And
subplot.
they run off.
Yeah.
It is very much a, do you want to go see this movie? Yes, I do. And they run as if Schindler's List had a baby with the fucking Rosebud movie.
Citizen Kane. Nobody
Citizen
wants to
Kane.
see Citizen Kane. I like it, but nobody else does. If you're not like in your 70s, you don't like Citizen Kane.
I've never seen it.
It's got some cool filmmaking shit going on. The story's just stupid as shit.
So meanwhile, Big Daddy and Hit Girl are purchasing some contraption that is treated a bit like the contents of the briefcase from Pulp Fiction. We don't know much except that they put Gatling guns on it.
And then it costs $300,000.
Yes, it's very, very expensive. Dave, meanwhile, has been neglecting his kick-ass duties because he's done with that now because he has a girlfriend, and that's the only thing that will stop a teenage boy from becoming an insane, violent vigilante of some sort for a cause. Oof.
Or a right-wing YouTuber.
Yeah. Well, there's a thin line.
A thin blue line.
Yeah. So when he does finally get around to checking on his kick-ass social media, Red Mist has been frantically trying to contact him. And despite having sworn off the kick-ass thing, Dave feels the need to find out what's going on with this. You know, he lets Katie know he's doing one last kick-ass thing. He has to. He'll be careful, blah, blah, blah. And he meets up with Red Mist. Red Mist tells him there's a price on their heads because the mob thinks that they killed everybody in the warehouse. Is there anybody that can help him? Basically baiting him into contacting Big Daddy and Hit Girl. They respond and send him coordinates to meet them at, and they are followed to this destination by D'Amico family soldiers. When they show,
hang on for one moment, because you know what our coordinates are.
What?
It's patreon.com/Nick Cage Fight.
That's right.
There were about 3 different times I was going to interrupt you, but you kind of kept going. So I was like, I'll find another one. Damn it, that was good. I'll find another one. Damn it, that was good too. And then I just stopped you with it because this one was good. So our coordinates, our top secret safe house number 2 is patreon.com/Nick Cage Fight, as well as Twitter Cage Fight Pod, Cage Fight _pod, right?
Yep, at cagefight_pod. Tell us about your favorite cereal mascots.
Yeah, tell us who would win in a battle royal of cereal mascots.
And why it's Boo Berry.
It's Urkel. It's got to be Urkel.
If you were pitching that Stefan Urkel could possibly last a couple of rounds, I would entertain the thought. But Urkel, absolutely not. Even he couldn't Mr. Magoo his way through an anthropomorphic super buff tiger. And
what about Bruce Lee Urkel? Does anybody else remember that episode where that happened?
I do specifically remember him wearing the like motorcycle one-piece suit, the yellow with the red or the black stripe, like Uma Thurman wears also in Kill Bill.
Because the only thing I remember about that episode was he calls it Bruce Juice, but he claims he doesn't know who the Bruce is, and he tells the biker gang, like, oh, maybe it's Bruce Springsteen. And they're like, oh, it'd be cool to meet the boss. And I'm like 6. I don't know who Bruce Springsteen is. I'm like, who is Bruce Springsteen and why is he their boss? Not knowing that Bruce Springsteen is called the boss, which again, who is he the boss of?
New Jersey.
Okay, so I was slightly mistaken. It's not the yellow biker outfit. It's the black jeans with the white beater that Urkel's rocking in that episode.
And so is Carl Winslow, because they both get hit with the Bruce Juice.
Yeah, it's the they're doing the Enter the Dragon costume, which was...
Yeah, I don't know why that scene stuck with me as much as it did.
Tune in for a spinoff where we review Fast and Furious movies and Urkel episodes called Only Family Matters.
That's cool. Low-key a podcast I would do.
Very cool.
We have a bright future ahead of us, folks.
Should we do some products here too, just while we're here? We're talking about Urkel and Boo Berry.
Yeah, sure.
We're right at the halfway point.
We're doing it for free already. Let's
yeah, hopefully I really hope that we get a Boo Berry ad, honestly. Like, hey, we know it's January, but Boo Berry,
Never too early to start advertising.
Okay, we're back. And yeah, Urkel would win that, I think. He probably
Well,
has some Ghostbuster juice that he can put into his people changing machine and turn himself into Bill Murray.
oh, he does do science shit. Maybe he could come up with. You know what?
I
Look,
mean, yeah, that's how he turns into Stefan Urkel. He does a Jekyll and
He
Hyde.
does a science.
he does. He does a Jekyll and Hyde. I'll have to go back and review some episodes since Urkel O's were actually a thing. I'm also pricing out signed boxes of the cereal for maybe next year's Christmas gift for the podcast host. We'll see.
Come on, Jaleel White can't be that expensive nowadays.
Dude, you'd be surprised. When I was first originally shopping for your Christmas presents, the first thing that I looked for was Nick Cage action figures because I thought this was perfect. Ryan likes action figures. Rich will accept an action figure as a gift. And it turns out those fuckers are collector's items and very expensive.
So there was a Jaleel White signed Urkel O's cereal box on eBay that I don't think anybody bought, but it was going for $105.
Oh shit. Get that seller's contact information. I'm gonna send him an
here
email.
it is again. Here he relisted it.
Cool. I did also find some evidence that Urkel fought a ghost once. I mean, it was a haunted doll, but it's still a ghost in there.
All right. Wait till 5 more people subscribe to the Patreon and we will go through this step by step.
We will have to watch the 2 Halloween episodes, Stevel and Stevel 2.
All right, I'm down.
Oh, wait, it's Stevel 2.
Am I about
He's
to
not
buy
alone.
this box of Urkel O's though?
I might buy that box of Urkel.
Don't give me a box of Urkelos. I'll eat them. I'll do that to me.
All right, we can't give it to Ryan. It belongs in a museum.
Museum of my tummy.
So we're getting to a very dramatic scene in the movie
Yeah, where Urkel fights ghosts.
where Red Mist and Kick-Ass meet up with Big Daddy and Hit Girl in Safe House B, which I thought was absurd. By the way, I don't know if you guys caught this in the scene. There is a B written on the door frame.
I did see that, yeah. You know what that actually reminded me of? In the Batman 66 movie, everything is labeled. In the Batcave, every machine has a label. In the villain's hideout, every shelf has a label.
It's like a Ben Garrison comic.
Yes, specifically like a Ben Garrison comic.
My favorite part of that, of the 1966 Batman, is the bat dust separator.
That's a good one. Also, the opening scene where Batman and Robin are in the helicopter and Batman goes down to try and save a boat and a shark just latches onto his leg for like 5 fucking minutes.
Yes.
And he's punching the shark and it's just dull thudding rubber noises. I love that movie. It's better than Kick-Ass.
I'm gonna watch it tonight actually because I've kind of forgot how good that movie is.
I mean, yeah, it's got all of the best Adam West Batman meme scenes. Like if you've seen a GIF of Adam West as Batman, it came from that movie.
Yes.
You got the big bomb running down in the harbor. You got the shark repellent bat spray. It's got all the hits.
Amazing. So as Red Mist and Kick-Ass enter the safe house, they're greeted by Big Daddy and Hit Girl. When Hit Girl goes to introduce herself, Red Mist pulls out a gun and shoots her in the chest, knocking her out the window that she's sort of sitting in front of. Goons storm in directly behind them, beating Kick-Ass and Big Daddy and bundling them up. Chris is also corralled. He shouts some ignored pleas to leave Kick-Ass alone because he had nothing to do with this. But he's grabbed by the big bodyguard guy who also loots a bazooka from the safe house as he goes, which I can't fault him for. That's prudent planning.
Yeah, if there was just a bazooka lying around, I'd take it.
Yeah,
That's
you
just
grab
Chekhov's bazooka at that point, though. You pick up a bazooka in the second act of a film, it's going to go off in the third.
It's Chekhov's bazooka. But no, if you see a bazooka lying around, you know you're fighting the nemesis in like the next room. So you want to grab it. So the mob puts up essentially we cut to some other characters. The news is playing. There is a live stream being advertised where Kick-Ass is going to unmask himself. So most of the cast is gathered in, or most of the supporting cast is gathered in the comic book store. Katie is calling Dave's phone saying this, you didn't tell me this is what you're doing as Kick-Ass today. That's awesome. But when the stream starts up, it's a bunch of dudes in ski masks and Big Daddy and Kick-Ass are tied to chairs. And it gets pretty violent pretty quickly. The men start to beat Big Daddy and Kick-Ass with a variety of weapons, including brass knuckles, bats, Kick-Ass's own batons, which is sort of adding insult to injury there. And everybody, we get some shots of everybody's collective horror at watching this.
Meanwhile,
and
the
then
local news is just showing this fucking snuff film.
well, they do
live.
stop it.
They stop it and then immediately say, like, if you're going to continue watching two people die, you can go to their website.
Well, yeah, everybody just hops on the internet at that point where the stream is not interrupted. And then after the beating, the bad guys go and douse Big Daddy and Kick-Ass in kerosene. And right as they're about to light them on fire, the goon holding the lighter is shot in the head. And then the flood lamps that are illuminating the scene are also shot out, and it's pitch dark. We get a first-person night vision scene a la Silence of the Lambs, and it is Hit Girl, because we knew from the introductory scene that she wears a bulletproof vest and can survive getting shot in the chest.
This is probably my favorite scene in the movie, by the way. No, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say whatever CGI elements they did for the night vision scene took away from it a little bit for me, but the remainder of this fight scene is pretty badass.
Okay, I thought it was cool. This is the scene that I'm saying is unhinged Nick Cage. This has a real shot. It doesn't have a real shot at number one, but it has a real shot as a top 3 or a top 5 contender.
Maybe 5, maybe. It's good. It's not full on unhinged Cage though.
Oh, him screaming out instructions, I thought was completely unhinged. When, oh god, I can't remember what he screams out when he tells her to like do something and it's like the strobe light.
That's Robin's Revenge. He calls out 2 plays for her. He says now go to Kryptonite.
He's like, Kryptonite.
Yeah, and Kryptonite is the strobe light on the underbarrel of the handgun. And then now go to Robin's Revenge is her taking that attachment off and leaving it on the shelf as a red herring and flanking around the remaining bad guys. So yeah, she's fighting these guys in the dark. Essentially, the entire scene is only illuminated with the muzzle flashes of the weapons going off. At some point during this scuffle, one of the bad guys gets the lighter and before getting killed, manages to ignite the kerosene pool under Big Daddy. And so Nick Cage, Big Daddy, is burning and calling out strategies that he has set up, like basically calling plays. Strategies that he set up with Mindy, helping her navigate taking on a warehouse full of mobsters in the pitch dark in the ways that we just described. But she ends up using the Robin's Revenge strategy, executing the final 2 bad guys, and then dousing the flames on Big Daddy. However, the damage is done. They have a brief moment together before Big Daddy succumbs to his wounds from the beating and the burning. Little minor bit of comic relief is, she says it hurt way worse getting shot than when, we were testing it. And Big Daddy's like, that's because I used low velocity rounds, so
right, because he would have completely destroyed her sternum and like fucking a rib cage if he used higher velocity rounds.
Yeah, if you're not also that's another thing I wanted to quibble with the first one. If you take a shot in a bulletproof vest, you can't just get shot again with that bulletproof vest. That's very dangerous and unsafe. The way that works is there's specific plates. It's usually a mix of Kevlar mesh and ceramic plates. But when those plates are shot, they're compromised, meaning if you get shot in that area again, it is not going to offer the same amount of protection because the thing that is distributing the impact of that kinetic force is now damaged and will not do that again. But anyway, neither here nor there, especially in a movie like this. So Hit Girl and Kick-Ass leave this scene together in Red Mist car, and Mindy takes them back to their primary hideout. Dave seems to be of the opinion that, they're lucky to have escaped with their lives. He's going to try and figure out where to put Mindy now that she doesn't have a father and can't, clearly can't continue on in the fashion that she has, whereas Hit Girl is committed to taking revenge for the death of her father, and also the fact that, you know, basically her whole life was ruined, you know, as told by Damon McCready by Frank D'Amico previously. So she gears up and talks Dave into providing backup on her murder mission because, and I'm inclined to agree with her, this is kind of all of his fucking fault that they're in this situation in the first place. So we get to the crescendo of the action scenes in this movie as the D'Amico compound is on full lockdown after their live stream didn't really go the way they wanted it to. Hit Girl shows up dressed not in her super suit, but in like a schoolgirl outfit at the lobby of this hotel. The D'Amico compound is like some sort of hotel thing.
Yeah, that's never made abundantly clear if it's like a hotel or just a skyscraper.
I think it's just a doorman building in New York. Like, they're all over the place.
Well, it's where people who can afford to live in New York live.
Yeah. So, but the goon in charge of the door lets her in despite everybody, and also minor super subplot that they had going on. This guy fucked up previously and wasn't allowed to carry a gun anymore, and they turned him into a doorman.
I think that was the guy they cut the finger off at the very beginning.
No, they killed that guy.
They did kill that guy. Okay.
Also different actor. And this guy has been in other shit. I want to say he's the dude who played Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde in League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, but that is purely off the top of my head.
I think you're right on that. I did look up the lobby goon. That's his listed name in the credits.
All right, fact check me on that, because that's just pure facial recognition on my part.
Yep, I'm on it.
So he had screwed up in some previous issue, and they took his gun away and made him a doorman, and he had just gotten his gun back in this scene. In fact, he's bragging about it and twirling it around right when Hit Girl comes up and knocks on the front door. He lets her in, and she says, you know, she lost her mommy and daddy. She's playing the lost little girl bit, and he leans down, obscuring our view of her, and he suddenly goes silent, and then his head turns, and we see that Hit Girl has stuck a gun in his mouth with the barrel like bulging out his cheek, and shoots through his cheek to kill the other enforcers that are in the lobby before killing him.
Yep, confirmed. That was a Dr. Jekyll in League, which is a bad movie based on a good comic.
It is. Which is apropos, I think.
He's also in the Solomon Kane movie, which is a good movie based on a bad series of short stories.
There you go. So Hit Girl then goes to the elevator, and as soon as the elevator comes to a stop at the main floor where all of the bad guys and Frank D'Amico and Chris D'Amico are holed up, she's in full Hit Girl gear and gets to killing.
To bad reputation.
Yes, to bad reputation.
I love Joan Jett. Don't like that rock and roll song. That is not a good song, but Bad Reputation's pretty fun.
There you go. It's a bit of an absurd murder montage. The most ridiculous bit is where she throws two magazines in front of her and then swings her guns violently towards them, locking them into place. I don't think the physics is going to back up the possibility of that, but it looks cool. But unfortunately, even Hit Girl
I'm sorry, are
can run
you
out
a
of bullets.
physicist?
What was that?
Are you a physicist? Do you know how things work?
If you can pull this off, Rich, I will eat my hat.
I will be doing nothing but working on this.
Go for it. Don't accidentally shoot yourself.
No, it'll be empty clips. I'm not an idiot.
I don't know if that'll have the weight that you need, even if it was possible to pull
you're
off.
Right.
Fill it with blanks.
Oh, yeah,
That's
blanks
still a problem. I've
blanks
seen the
have
Crow.
never killed
I know
anybody.
what happens.
Yeah, either way, go ahead. Get to practicing on that. Let me know what you come up with. But yeah, unfortunately, even Hit Girl will run out of bullets eventually, which she does. There's still a lot of goons around. She takes cover behind a counter in this like kitchen area. She, of course, immediately assesses the surroundings and grabs a block of kitchen knives off of the counter, which one of the goons finds out as soon as he's forced to go into the room and try and confront her. And she sinks two knives directly into his chest, thrown from across the room. Solid throws. So Big Bodyguard is like, fuck this after the guy gets stabbed in the chest with these thrown knives, and he goes and gets his bazooka.
And
Another
kind of a
moderately
funny
funny
scene too.
What was that?
And kind of a funny scene
Yeah.
too, because like he comes into the room and he's just like, "Where? Like we got this." Then he goes and gets the bazooka, and he kind of waits for permission.
Yeah, he's
And-
like, what he says, he's like, we got this handled. And he grabs the bazooka, and Chris is like, what the fuck do you mean you have it handled? You just grabbed the bazooka. And the guy stops and looks at Frank, and Frank's like, okay, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
just
and this
gives
does
him a
have the
quick
best
nod.
payoff, like the payoff for bringing the bazooka out, and then when it comes back around is the funniest line in the whole movie.
Yeah. So the bodyguard comes out with the bazooka. It's not looking great for Hit Girl. Like, she's peeking an eye out of one bullet hole in the cabinets, and she sees the dude lift the bazooka to shoot, gives a line about say hello to my little friend, a little Scarface reference, because of course. And then we see we get the big reveal as to what Big Daddy and Hit Girl purchased for $300,000 in attached Gatling guns too. And it's a
fucking
completely
jetpack.
absurd jetpack that Kick-Ass is piloting from just outside the floor-to-ceiling windows, and he lights up the remaining goons with these Gatling guns to some absurd opera score, I believe.
I didn't catch what it was, so
I didn't either,
I'll
but
find out. Give me a second. I like opera.
I think it's an opera score. I'm not 100%. Guns him down and lands inside the penthouse suite or whatever they're in, and they finally have Frank and Chris D'Amico cornered, and it's time for some Frank versus Hit Girl and Kick-Ass versus Chris, since he's not in his red mist gear. I don't think he's in his red mist gear. I don't remember.
I don't remember, but also I just kind of assumed that those two would pair off because like they're the two non-threats who are just going to slap fight each other.
Yeah. Whereas Frank is like a weird kung fu adherent, and Hit Girl's a trained
so much
kid assassin.
stupider than opera. It's a fucking Elvis Presley combination of like 4 of his songs together called an American Trilogy.
Oh shit. Ugh.
I like Elvis, but yeah, no, that's way stupider than some opera.
Oh, I like Elvis, and I love how insane he was in like the 70s.
If by the way, before everybody piles on me, you called Elvis opera. If you listen to the score, it sounds a little bit like an aria at the point.
It's over orchestrated. Yeah, it's from
Gotcha.
Elvis's like mid 70s arena rock era before he died.
All right. I feel less bad for mislabeling it. So yeah, the Chris D'Amico versus Kick-Ass fight is largely inept and absurd. It's the physical comedy, which ultimately ends with them simultaneously hitting each other in the head with blunt instruments and knocking each other out. Meanwhile, the Hit Girl versus Frank fight is much more brutal, but Hit Girl is taking some licks because she's basically out of her violent doodads and is just fist fighting a grown man who likes to practice martial arts. So after beating her down pretty badly, Frank finally retrieves his handgun, and it looks like he's gonna shoot her dead. But Dave has recovered from his blow to the head and is standing in the doorway with a bazooka and gives a classic, why don't you pick on someone your own size line before firing the bazooka, the payload of which carries Frank D'Amico out the window and away from the building before exploding.
I got to do a quick rewind. Did we mention that just before Hit Girl comes into the room, Frank says, that was a weird sounding bazooka in reference to the Gatling guns? Because that is my favorite line of the movie.
I did gloss over that, and you're right, that is doing it a disservice, because him and Chris actually do high five, and he's like, all right, finally. That's a weird sounding bazooka. That was good. That was a good line.
It is probably the best writing in the whole movie, is just that one payoff for an earlier, the guy getting the bazooka.
To be fair, the writing, the jokes around the bazooka are some of the best jokes, because we skipped over it when it happened, but when they get back to the D'Amico compound from the safe house and the dude's carrying a bazooka and Frank's like, is that a bazooka? And the guy looks at him and Frank's like, all right.
I mean, that's the proper response to some dude bringing you a bazooka.
Yeah. So yeah, they did make the most of that. I will say I'm not overly familiar with this particular weapon, and I know Dave's character is not familiar with this weapon. So the fact that the payload carried Frank D'Amico out a window before exploding, as opposed to hitting him and exploding, killing everybody in the fucking room, is a bit of movie magic Deus Ex Machina.
That's how that works, actually. There's a number of rotations the bazooka has, or the rocket propelled grenade has to make before the payload explodes. I actually had a buddy who did that in the Iraq War, is like his whole ass job. And it's distance and timing based, not impact based.
Oh, there we go. Okay, so not the most unrealistic thing. We're gonna have to give that to the jetpack. With
Yes, the jetpack is wildly wrong with how that works. There's no way you're going to have the amount of ammunition that he has for the Gatling gun, or either of the Gatling guns, able to take him that high up into the air. Maybe like 3 feet off the ground, not that high up.
Also, the propulsion is just downward from your back with the no counterbalance weights or anything like that. Like, we actually, if you haven't seen the fucking YouTube videos, we have semi-functional Iron Man-ish jetpacks now, and it does require stabilizers on your arms to keep from just sort of taking a header directly into the asphalt.
I do love seeing dudes beef it on those, though.
I know.
It makes for
So-
some good viewing.
Yeah.
I mean, if I can't have a jetpack, everyone that uses one should get the shit beaten out of them by the jetpack. That's my logic.
I agree with that entirely. So Kick-Ass and Hit Girl jetpack off away to safety as Chris is sort of left to watch them leave after grabbing a katana from his dad's weird dojo. And after a weird introduction of their non-superhero personas on a rooftop, we get the postscript, basically. Mindy goes to live with Marcus and actually starts attending school. Her first school since Damon took custody of her again when she was 5 and basically just trained her as an assassin instead of giving her any of that book learning.
I mean, what good are books? If
yeah.
Andrew Tate has told us anything, it's reading is stupid. Timely reference, we can continue.
Books are great. There's a lot of porn that's in books.
There's also a lot of porn and videos on the computer that don't require words.
Look,
Yeah.
the difference between pornography and erotica is one is visual, the other is written.
Look, every once in a while, you got to read some smut. Just in
You
case we
do.
have any lady listeners, we appreciate your version of smut consumption just as well. It's perfectly valid.
Or the French.
Or the French.
Or the
Or
French.
dudes
Yep.
reading smut. You can
Yeah, I
read
mean, like,
smut.
I got a copy of Lady Chatterley's Lover. That book whips ass.
There you go. Your New Year's resolution should be read more smut. Consume more of your smut through literature.
Yes.
Shake things up. Make it a weird year.
Get
Um,
weak with it, yeah.
Make that your foreplay. Like, read a chapter out loud.
In your sexiest voice. That's how you should do it. So Dave essentially finishes his voiceover narration indicating that, he has quit. He has hung up his batons and costume, but apparently a bunch of other people took his lead, and now there's a bunch of vigilantes running around, and that's probably going to work out just fine. And we also get a scene of Chris setting up to become a supervillain, and he puts on a weird Hannibal Lecter style mask and points a gun at the camera and fires it, and then we get credits rolling.
This
And that was
movie's mid.
Kick-Ass.
This movie's so mid.
Agreed. It's pretty lame. It's a
Yeah.
lame duck movie.
Nick Cage absolutely fucks in it. He's so good, but everything around it, like, there were so many casting errors. Nick Cage was phenomenal. The girl that plays Hit Girl is very, very good.
She's pretty good. I did like when she said cunt. That was funny.
Well, yeah, I mean, on top of everything, I thought that she was just good, and I think she's a good actress too. I've never seen her in anything where I like hated her.
She's definitely damn good in that Suspiria remake. I'll put my stamp of approval on that one.
The kid who played Kick-Ass is, again, I've seen him in things that I really liked. He was not good in this role, and I just don't know if that was him not being, not knowing who he was as an actor yet, or were the people around him just too charismatic that it drowned him out.
He gets to be a good actor. He was great in Bullet Train.
He was great in Bullet Train.
He
was
might be
good in
one of the
Bullet
best
Train. He
things
was-
about Bullet Train.
I don't remember who he was in Nocturnal Animals, but that's a crazy movie that is good. I recommend He's a complete fucking psycho in Outlaw King, which is it's a movie. I don't know if I would necessarily recommend it, but his performance in it is fucking amazing. He's just a screaming lunatic from like a maligned family or a wronged family, and he's just a spitting psychopath on a medieval battlefield.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool. I vaguely remember him in Tenet, which was a weird but interesting movie. I enjoyed it. And he was, like everybody said, he's fucking fantastic in Bullet Train. If you want Whiplash, watch Kick Ass and Bullet Train back to back in that order.
You won't be able to tell it's him though. He looks completely different.
I didn't know it was him till I looked it up.
He does look different. But the one thing I do want to say is I don't actually have any quibbles with his performance here because he's supposed to be a dipshit, fish out of water high school kid in a situation that far surpasses both his expectations and any sort of life experience. And I think he accomplishes that pretty soundly by being inept and overshadowed by all of these other personalities that are occurring around him. I think in that light, he performs admirably. You know, it's what he was supposed to bring to the table for this role, I think.
Yeah, I kind of.
I mean,
agree. He's just, he's just boring.
Yeah, I mean, I get what you're saying. I disagree, but I understand it, so I'm okay with it.
But yeah, Cage, I think, put on a fantastic showing here. Again, as much as he had breathing room, I think he brought 3 fully fleshed characters, completely distinct from each other, into this, and I think that was done very competently. Mark Strong was fantastic in this. Frank D'Amico is a legitimate, charismatic bad guy.
Yes,
Yeah, I would say that the adults are interesting in this movie, but the main characters not so much.
I don't disagree. I feel like the main characters are almost just sort of the catalyst for the plot itself, but not like again that's the one reason why I'm disagreeing with Rich on it is I think that is a necessary consequence of it. Like Dave is one of these things is not like the others completely out of place in the wider scheme of what's going on here, which is a mob war against a crazy dude and a child soldier, and he's just trying to fulfill some weird childish fantasy. I didn't mention it. I meant to mention it at Big Daddy's death scene, but I do want to go into one major branching off from the source material.
Mm-hmm.
And that was Big
Daddy's.
We
didn't really touch on the comic too much, but yeah, I'd be interested to hear your take on that.
So in the comics, it's revealed.
Doesn't Big Daddy have a chainsaw in the comics too? I do remember that.
Oh, I think that was one of the cover arts. Is him with a chainsaw.
I never read it, so I am yielding to you two.
Yeah, I read it once, but like Mark Miller comics for me they're empty calories. They're candy.
Yeah. But the backstory is very different. So it's revealed, I think, around the time of Big Daddy's death in the comics, that the entire backstory is 100% bullshit. His wife hated him and divorced him and left him. And he was a comic book nerd and obsessed with comic books. And the way he funded Big Daddy and Hit Girl's excursions is he had an extensive comic book collection that was worth about $1 million. So he was just selling those, buying safe houses and weapons, and essentially kidnapped Mindy and trained her to be an assassin. So there was no actual impact on his life from this crime lord. This was just him acting out his own comic book fantasies, which add another layer of pathetic, psychotic fantasy to the overall story. I think it's probably better for the movie overall that they changed that up a bit.
Yeah.
I think it would play better today because, again, I'm thinking of it in like 2010, which when did Watchmen come out?
The comic book or the movie?
The movie. Because I want to say it may have been a little bit before this, like maybe 2008,
I think
2009.
You're right on that. I'll find out.
And I remember that was a movie that was taken, very seriously. And 09. It was a movie that was taken very seriously, and it kind of got panned.
Well, it's because they they did a shot for shot remake of a lot of the panels without completely internalizing the point of the thing.
They
Like,
made it flashy and sexy instead of like
grimy and gross and
yes.
and existentially horrifying, which is what the comic is.
So
Right.
I will say
And
this. We can do a quick diversion on this because Ryan, you already stated you do not like the Watchmen movie.
I think it's a fun watch, but I don't think it's a good movie. I think it's a terrible adaptation of one of the greatest pieces of graphic narrative literature.
I think it misses the ethos of the original, but I gotta give it. I gotta give it.
I like a lot of it, like visually, but they took out the giant squid.
Well, here's the thing. I think from a logical perspective, I get the giant squid thing, and it's a whole tie-in for like the pirate comics that actually exist in the universe. But the plot that they go with in the movie makes more fucking sense to Ozymandias's overall strategy than the fucking squid does.
Well, the giant squid is supposed to represent an alien invasion that humanity is supposed to come together
Unite
to go
behind.
Exactly, yeah.
But villainizing the only actual superhero as this detached, like comparable to humans and ants thing, I think is way more compelling. I'm not gonna lie. And
right.
I love
Sorry, go ahead.
I love the original comic, and I didn't have any problems with the ending of the comic until I saw what they did with the movie instead, pinning the whole thing instead of an alien invasion, Dr. Manhattan gone mad situation makes way more sense. It squares the circle better than the squid.
Right. And so, and when I'm comparing this to Watchmen, I am solely comparing the movie and how it performed and how it was viewed at the time versus what happened here. And I think Watchmen as a movie at the time was seen as very serious in a, very liberal society, where in the same time as like V for Vendetta, which came out, I think in like 05, 06, which again was,
and also misses the point of the comic. Like
right.
Alan Moore cannot catch a break.
Right. But what is that, I still remember like in the movie, they somehow tied George Bush into it. But again, it was a movie that was taken kind of very seriously, that they had thought that people were going to kind of view this as like a piece of art, and it wasn't. Well, I know you have it. It's a great graphic novel.
Yes.
But in terms of the movie, it was kind of panned as like, oh, it's just a comic book movie. And I think that in 2010, we were still kind of in that it's just a comic book movie. And we were kind of in that up until probably Logan.
I don't know if I agree with that, because like the Batman movies were critically acclaimed and they predate the Alan Moore bastardizations of his work.
Yeah,
like
but I think that they were
specifically the Christopher Nolan ones are what I'm thinking of, because the 90s had the Val Kilmer and
I think the
George
90s
Clooney
ones
bad.
were too far gone. The first new Batman was okay. The second one was I think it got helped by Heath Ledger dying, but also, he was the reason you went. You didn't go to see Batman. You went because you had to see this phenomenal Joker.
It was a fantastic performance.
He is the best Joker.
Yeah.
Well, Mark Hamill.
Yeah.
No, I will gladly say that it's the best performance I've seen in a movie ever. I'd say that in all seriousness.
You need to see more foreign films, buddy.
Yeah, you're probably right.
It is a little bit more striking knowing Heath Ledger in other roles. He's unrecognizable in that film.
Yes, agreed.
But to try to get back on point, is comic book movies were still seen as this kind of silly thing that don't really have a point to be made outside of good guy beats bad guy. And I know, there are obvious ones that stood out, like The Dark Knight,
Spider-Man 2
as well. Like those are some of the ones that, kind of stood up. But for the most part, it was here's good guy, here's bad guy, good guy beats bad guy, and we're all happy. And that's what a comic book movie was as of 2010.
Right. And shortly after that, it gets to the point where a lot of independent comics start getting adaptations. So you can't really tell if it's a comic book movie unless you look at the credits. Because there's like a ton of comic books that aren't superhero bullshit. And a lot of them did get optioned as films. Like Snowpiercer is a comic book.
Snowpiercer is amazing.
You couldn't tell that was a comic book movie if you didn't know that.
Yeah.
I mean, it's got like kind of the wacky action, but like it plays in a way that a standard American action movie would.
Yeah. So I think that when turning this into a movie, they kind of had to make it more palatable for audiences, and they did what they had to. And it killed a lot of the things that it was trying to say.
Well, I mean, that was the only two major deviations from the plot was that Chris D'Amico in the comic books was painted more as a sociopath than a loner kid, trying to capture some element of a normal teenage existence through a fucked up way, but the only lens that, he really had access to. And then the more pathetic origins of Big Daddy. But again, those from the comic books are what caused me to compare it to as far as the general idea that they were coming from with to Watchmen, is that superheroes in real life are crazy people. It's the only way that it would lead somebody to try and do something like this.
Yeah, and also in like the marketing too of this movie, I think you can only have one kid be be a weird, not a weirdo, but like kind of larger than life, and they chose Hit Girl.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So they had to ground, Chris D'Amico's character. They couldn't make him a complete sociopath, because at what point do studios kind of get scared, I think.
Hey, Rich, you know what his character ends up changing his name to?
What?
The Motherfucker.
I knew that. I actually knew that.
In fact, they had to change some elements of the second one too to keep to keep from putting something that you really can't get away with in a movie of this tenor, and also to keep up the character backstory that they put together for the Chris D'Amico character in the films as opposed to the comic books.
Yeah, because It's like, what, a fucking serial rapist in the comic?
Well, yeah, there's a pretty violent scene along those lines in the comics that lends to his general psychopathic origins, and in the movies they play it off differently to another sort of semi-gross comedic effect where he can't perform that act for whatever reason, and it just becomes a beating instead of something more gratuitous. But again, it's missing whatever point, agree or disagree with that point from the comics, and sort of just turns it into a more palatable, straightforward superhero or realistic superhero film.
And then I made the mistake of looking into what like critics had to say about this movie, and of course nothing about like the whole kind of lack of deeper plot. I guess it was more of, this film is too violent. I don't want my kids watching somebody their age be this violent.
It was rated R. What the hell are you talking about?
I hold on. Who's
so? I do.
It was. I'm sorry. I just got to read this from Roger Ebert. When kids in the age range of this movie's home video audience are shooting one another every day in America, that kind of stops being funny.
Shit, I want him to go back and review this again now in this year of our Lord 2023.
Isn't he long dead at this point?
Right.
I thought Ebert passed.
Yeah, I think he did. Yeah, 2013.
Oh shit. Well, I take it
well,
back.
Then he can chill with Boo Berry.
Yeah. I do have to bring up there was another gritty realistic superhero movie that came out in the same exact year that did not shy away from some of the elements of altered mental states that you'd need to be in to perform something like this.
Is that the one with the fucking Office guy in it?
Super. Starring Rainn Wilson.
I remember not liking that one either.
I didn't
really
see that.
Yeah. I didn't think it was particularly well written, but it definitely was more realistic.
It was written and directed by James Gunn.
Yeah, that tracks. I don't really like that dude's writing style for the most part. He occasionally has some hits, but for the most part, I just
starring Rainn Wilson, Elliot Page, Liv Tyler, and Kevin Bacon, and Nathan Fillion. but I will say they lean like Rainn Wilson's character in it is essentially schizophrenic. He thinks he's getting messages from God. His wife leaves him and he dons like a weird superhero suit. But the scene from it that I'll never forget is like somebody cuts him in line when he's in his like civilian uniform, and his whole super thing is he puts on a suit and beats people with a wrench. And so he gets cut in line, I think, to a movie. And so he leaves, he puts on his super suit and he beats a man viciously with a pipe wrench and is like, you have to obey the rules. Like this whole thing falls apart if you don't obey the rules. And you get, oh, this dude is completely fucking insane.
Yeah.
And I think it does a better job with the conveying the message that they're going for than Kick-Ass does.
I agree with that. It's just, like I said, James Gunn's writing style isn't really for me. The one movie I do really like from him is Slither, and that's just a straight up monster movie.
I see. I kind of like the James Gunn superhero movies, but that could just be like the basic bitch in me.
Rich, if you haven't seen it, watch Super.
Yeah, I'm probably going to within the next 48 hours.
Oh, you know what? I think he also wrote The Belko Experiment, and I did like that movie. That sick fucking movie.
So I kind of decided that ranking these like episode by episode is becoming like too much of a chore. So I figured I'd go with like kind of ranges.
All right.
And like as movie quality, like this shit is mid. It's not as good as Kill Chain of Between
Mid third,
Worlds.
yeah, like
Yeah.
It's not
bottom
as good
of
as
the mid
Xandali.
third, I'd say.
It's not as good as Kiss of Death. Like it might be better than it's better than Knowing. But it's
I'd
somewhere
rather
right
watch
about
this
there.
than Knowing, honestly, but not by much. I don't think I'm going to revisit this film anytime soon.
Yeah,
Would you rather watch this or USS Indianapolis?
this definitely.
Oh, but USS Indy's got Tom Sizemore.
It does, but not enough.
I'd rather watch the Sizemore scenes than this whole movie. This movie
I-
is kind of like white noise to me.
Fair.
Yeah. As for the performance, like I thought he was pretty good to very good. Like he's not going to top the charts on anything. Like I probably put him along the lines of like a Honeymoon in Vegas or Kiss of Death or like the lower end of the top third.
Yeah, he's not phoning it in. He's definitely trying. And
Yeah,
you know what?
there's
the
a lot
Adam
of
West
effort going in.
the Adam West voice patterns are kind of charming. I'll give him that. It's a good showing by
Yeah.
Cage. Not a great film, but a good showing by our man.
I agree.
Unhinged film, I kind of need to think on this for a bit because the film itself is a bit unhinged. Just like
Yeah, I guess it is.
just because of the nature of what they're talking about. So, but like when we always talked about unhinged, we always talk about a specific type of unhinged, and this film is not it.
Yeah. It's middle of the pack.
At
I
least,
mean,
yeah.
I think I need to like sit and think on this and then give an answer on our next ranking episode.
Fair enough.
Because it could be middle of the pack. It could be a top 5, depending on what your definition of unhinged is. Because like I said, like we kind of work off a very specific type of unhinged, you know, which is like crazy performances and stuff like this. But this is just crazy content, kind of, if that makes
Mhm.
sense.
You have to fill out your spreadsheet, dude.
I do. I'll do
We
that
can
tonight,
sort,
actually.
we can filter.
I still got to
Um,
fill out the rest of mine, but I was doing that while I was editing, and I still got to finish up this last episode. So
My unhinged scene on this is the Nick Cage death scene.
Yeah.
And I think
Yeah.
it's I think it's top, definitely somewhere in the top third.
it's either that or the jetpack that doesn't make any damn physical sense.
Well, it's specifically the Nick Cage unhinged scene, and I would like to his death
Oh,
scene.
hold on. We did have Tom Sizemore as the most unhinged scene of USS.
That was an
Indy.
honorable mention. He was cradling his own severed foot.
But he's still on the list.
Fair. But I
there,
would also
there,
posit,
there is an asterisk on it though.
true. I would also posit him doing his makeup in the mirror, like putting on the mustache extenders and the paint around the eyes is pretty unhinged.
Or just very calmly shooting his daughter towards the beginning.
That
Yeah,
too.
there's a decent amount of unhinged Cage.
I agree.
Hair, I would put middle of the pack. The hair itself,
The
is a little
mustache
right about,
is
but the
good.
mustache is good. That's what's kind of saving it. It's going to be like the top of the middle of the pack. I feel
Agreed.
we have no Cage butt.
No Cage nudity whatsoever. Dude is buttoned up like
This would be a weird one to have Cage nudity in.
It would be weird, but yeah, no, he's He's either dressed as Batman or
as a dad.
dad at a cookout.
Yeah, I like Dad Cage personally.
The only thing he was missing was a pair of New Balance, the official shoe of dads.
Yep.
Yeah, much like Facebook is the official website of Crazy Uncles and also us at Nick Cage Fight, facebook.com/Nick Cage Fight.
And we are also on Twitter at cagefight_pod. Give us a follow.
Tell us about cereals, because half of this podcast has been about cereals.
Yeah, that's going to keep Rich up at night.
I'm going to wake up in a sweat just yelling Tony the Tiger.
Yeah, no, I cover him extensively in my dissertation.
He can't beat a ghost, but like if he goes like true, like just ass kicking Tiger, he's going to go far.
Oh, yeah. He's one of the top contenders for sure.
Patreon.com/Nick Cage Fight, where we
all
try
your
to
dreams can come true.
where all of your dreams can come true. And by dreams, we mean Ryan playing G-Force. Not just playing, but speed running, and not just speed running, but breaking the world record.
I'm going to break that game like Bane broke the bat.
You can also force me to break my brain by watching Next on a continuous loop for, I don't even want to.
I may just make a bunch of burner accounts just to force you to do that.
Hey, look, I'm willing to suffer if you pay me. Just ask my day job.
I mean, yeah, same.
All right, I do think that that's going to do it for us. That was Kick-Ass. It's a movie.
It's mid. It's mid as hell.
It is what it is. But thanks.
Wait a minute. Before we thank them for stopping by, we have to find out what movie we're watching this week.
Oh God!
Yeah, what do we got
that's
next?
Right. I need my marching orders.
Listen, everybody. This has been like a real fucked up day. I feel for like everybody. I got stranded like in a weird part of New Jersey where my alternator wasn't working. It sucked. And when I say weird part of New Jersey, understand that we all live in the Pine Barrens, like the weirdest part of New Jersey.
Yep.
So I'm going weirder than that. It's been a long day.
Stop triangulating our location. Don't dox us.
Yeah, please try to find us in the 200-mile square radius, the 200-mile square radius of the Pine Barrens. Ooh, watching the Humanity Bureau.
I don't know anything about that.
I've never seen it.
I haven't either.
Oh, we're all going in nice and cold. Who's in this? Let's find
people, apparently, none of whom I recognize other than our boy.
This came out in 2017.
I don't know
set
why.
In 2030.
I don't know why I thought that this was going to not be a direct-to-DVD, but it is.
No, it looks like it had a limited release in maybe China. Because I'm seeing film posters that are in an Asian language, and I don't know any of those well enough to identify which. It's definitely not Korean, though. It doesn't have the circle bits.
There's nobody.
Oh, no, that's a Japanese theatrical trailer. There was a Japanese theatrical release of this.
Yeah, I am not familiar with the director or writer.
Apparently,
one of the dudes in this movie, his IMDb photo is just a fucking werewolf. Like, it's not even his real ass picture.
Who is it? Just out of curiosity.
Leo Fawford.
Yes.
As the motel clerk. Is that fucking Wolf Cop? Is that what I'm saying?
It is Wolf
here?
Cop.
It is Wolf Cop. Okay. Awesome.
Apparently, one of these dudes, Hugh Dillon, is in Yellowstone, which apparently I'm the only person not watching.
Yeah, no, me neither.
Everybody else.
Yo, they made another Wolf Cop called Another Wolf Cop? Shit, I know what I'm watching tonight.
Fantastic.
Yeah. Oh man. Yeah. This movie looks like it is going to be awful.
All right. Who wrote and
but
directed
we
this turd?
we've said that about a few things though, and they turned out to like really be good. Like I think we
had extremely low expectations for Between Worlds, and that movie was excellent.
Yeah. No.
Yeah. I was about to say
was...
I think if you like went back to the episode before Between Worlds and to us announcing it was that, we were probably just all like, oh, this is gonna suck. It's gonna be like David Lynch, but way worse. And oh, look at this, it's gonna be awful. And then we watched it, we're like, this movie goes so hard.
I'm interested in this. A dystopian thriller set in 2030 that sees the world in a permanent state of economic recession, facing serious environmental problems as a result of global warming. So it'll be nice to get an escape from our normal daily lives.
They kind of overshot that one, didn't they?
Yeah, got here a little bit quicker than they were anticipating. But
Yeah,
that's fine.
as I sit here and it's 52 degrees out on January 5th.
There you go. All right. Well, join us next time for the Humanity Bureau. Thanks for stopping by, listeners. And as always, we appreciate you.
Bye-bye.